Mrs. Garrett's laughter cut through Miller's general store like a knife through butter sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. Marlene Colby stood in the back corner, restocking flour sacks with hands that had learned to be invisible. 22 years old and already an expert at disappearing into shadows, into silence, into the spaces between other people's conversations. Old Hatcher needs barn help, Mrs. Garrett announced to her cluster of church ladies, voice carrying with theatrical precision. I've found the perfect candidate, someone with stamina. The glances slid toward Marlene like oil across water. Laughter erupted polite, feminine, deadly. Marlene's hands froze on a 50-pound sack. Her stomach dropped the way it always did, that familiar plunge into shame she'd been riding since childhood. But rent was 3 weeks overdue. Her mother's cough had worsened, rattling through their thin walls like bones in a cup. She stepped forward before courage could abandon her. I'll do it. The laughter died. Mrs. Garrett's smile sharpened into something surgical. How wonderful, dear. She produced a paper from her handbag with the efficiency of a magician pulling a rabbit. Mr. Hatcher's address, 5 miles north. Dawn would be best before the heat becomes unbearable. She pressed the paper into Marlene's palm. Don't expect warmth, though. That man's heart died with his daughter 10 years ago. He barely speaks to anyone in town. Mrs. Garrett's eyes glittered. But hard work never hurt anyone. Did it? And the Lord knows you're built for labor. More laughter, softer this time, pitying. Yes, ma'am, Marlene said. When do I start? Tomorrow, if you're able. Marlene nodded and walked toward the door. Paper clutched so tight it crumpled in her fist. Outside, in the brutal August sun, she stopped, looked down at the wrinkled address. For a moment she wanted to throw it in the dirt, wanted to walk back inside and tell Mrs. Garrett exactly what she could do with her charity wrapped in cruelty. Instead, she smoothed the paper carefully, folded it, tucked it in her pocket. If they wanted to watch her fail, she'd give them something else to see. Dawn came cold and beautiful. Marlene walked 3 miles before the sun cleared the mountains. Couldn't afford the wagon fare. By the time Hatcher Ranch rose from the prairie, her feet ached and her dress clung to her back with sweat that had nothing to do with heat. The barn loomed like a sleeping giant wounded, forgotten, waiting. Half the roof sagged inward. The doors hung crooked on rusted hinges. Weeds choked the foundation, and the smell of rot drifted on the morning wind. It was the kind of work that would break most men. She squared her shoulders. A man watched from the porch of the main house, weathered as old leather. Gray beard, eyes the color of winter sky. 50-something. Solid. Still. Marlene forced her legs to carry her forward. Mr. Hatcher, I'm Marlene Colby. Mrs. Garrett sent me about the barn work. He looked at her for a long moment, not scanning her body the way most men did, cataloging her weight, her failure to be small and decorative. His eyes assessed her the way a rancher might assess a horse or a storm, measuring capability, not appearance. Barn's there, he said finally. Tools in the shed. Water pump by the fence. He turned to walk back inside, then paused. You eatin'? The question caught her off guard. Yes, sir. He grunted a sound that suggested he knew she was lying, disappeared into the house. Returned a minute later with biscuits wrapped in cloth, a strip of jerky, and a canteen. Set them on the fence post between them. Eat first. Can't haul hay on empty. His voice was gravel and honey. Days long. Pace yourself. I need steady, not heroic. Marlene stared at the food. Real food. Not charity served with condescension, but fuel offered to a worker. I won't let you down, Mr. Hatcher. Name's just Hatcher. He almost smiled. Save the mister for townfolk. He walked away, a cattle dog appearing at his heels like a shadow made flesh. Marlene picked up a biscuit, bit into it. Flaky, buttery, Made with care. Her throat tightened with something that wasn't quite tears. She blinked hard, picked up the shovel. The barn smelled like rot and possibility. By sunset, she'd moved a mountain one shovelful at a time, 3 stalls mucked clean. A wagon load of rotted hay hauled to the burn pile. Water troughs scrubbed until her knuckles bled. Her body screamed with exhaustion. Muscles she'd forgotten existed announced themselves with fire. But something else happened too. Each shovelful of manure she threw. Each board she stacked. Each nail she straightened. They were small refutations. Tiny declarations. I am not the joke you think I am. The work proved something the mirror never could. Pain triggered memory, the way it always did. She was 12 again. Her father standing in the doorway with his carpet bag packed, not meeting her eyes. I didn't sign up for this, he'd said, gesturing vaguely at her body as if it were a natural disaster he couldn't be expected to endure. She was 15. School dance. Boys laughing. Bet the floor cracks when Marlene walks. She'd gone home early. Told her mother she had a headache. She was 19. Church social. Mrs. Garrett stage whispering to another woman. Such a shame. Pretty face. But all that, well, no man will take that on. Marlene drove the shovel harder into the earth. Footsteps behind her. She straightened. Wiped sweat from her forehead. Hatcher stood in the barn doorway, backlit by dying sun. He ran his hand along a beam she'd cleaned, testing the wood. Nodded once. Good work. Strong work. He looked at her directly. Tomorrow, then. Not effusive, not false, real. I'll be here, Marlene said. Most quit by noon, heat or pride. Can't say which. I'm not most people. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition. Maybe respect. Noticed. He walked away. She gathered her things, every muscle protesting, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years, buoyant in a way she'd forgotten was possible. The walk home took longer. Her legs trembled. The stars emerged one by one, hard and bright and certain. Behind her, though she didn't know it, Hatcher stood on his porch watching until she was safely out of sight. His dog whined softly. I know, Blue, he murmured. She'll do just fine. 3 weeks turned summer into autumn. A rhythm emerged between them, wordless and complete. Marlene arrived at dawn to find coffee waiting on the fence post, always hot, always black, always there. She learned where tools lived, which horses needed gentle hands. When storms gathered on the northern horizon, they worked in comfortable silence punctuated by short exchanges about timber or weather or the best way to mend tack. She'd never felt so seen in her life. One afternoon, Hatcher taught her to repair a bridle, sat beside her on the porch step, showed her the proper stitch leather through hole, pull tight, repeat. His hands guided hers with patient precision, calloused fingers, surprisingly warm. Blue stretched between them, head on Marlene's boot. Animals don't lie, Hatcher observed. Marlene's throat tightened. She focused on the leather, on the rhythm of the needle. My daughter Sarah. Hatcher said suddenly, she didn't suffer fools either. Would have liked you. He pulled a tintype from his shirt pocket. A girl maybe 15, bright-eyed and fierce. His smile in miniature. She was beautiful, Marlene whispered. She was brave. He tucked the photo away. Fever took her 10 years back. Haven't had much use for people since. I'm sorry. Don't be, just... She'd have been glad I'm not alone out here anymore. Before Marlene could respond, the sound of a wagon interrupted them. Mrs. Garrett and 2 other church ladies rolled into the yard, parasols raised against the afternoon sun like battle standards. Marlene, dear Mrs. Garrett's voice dripped concern. We simply had to check on you. Make sure you're managing. The unspoken words hung heavy, still out here with him alone. Marlene stood, met Mrs. Garrett's gaze without flinching. I'm thriving, Mrs. Garrett. Thank you for asking. The women's eyes cataloged everything: the repaired barn, the clean yard, Marlene's sun-browned arms and confident stance. Their smiles tightened. How industrious. Mrs. Garrett said, Well, we won't keep you from your work. They left in a cloud of dust and disapproval. Hatcher hadn't moved from the step when the wagon disappeared. He spoke quietly. Don't let vipers bite twice. Once is enough. That night. Marlene dreamed of a fierce girl standing in a barn that didn't exist yet but would. The storm came fast, like God slamming a door. Marlene and Hatcher were reinforcing the northwest corner when thunder cracked so loud it made the horses scream. Rain followed instantly, sheets of water sideways, turning the world gray and roaring. Inside, Hatcher shouted over the wind. They ran for the barn, dragging the last of the timber. Lightning split the sky, close enough to taste copper. The horses kicked their stalls, wild-eyed. Hatcher moved through the barn with calm efficiency, checking latches, speaking low words that gentled the animals. Marlene followed his lead, hands steady despite her racing heart. When the horses settled, Hatcher built a small fire in the cleared corner far from hay. Close to stone, orange light pushed back against the storm's fury. Might be a while, he said. Weather like this doesn't move fast. They sat on overturned crates. Rain hammered the tin roof like nails. Thunder rolled and rolled. Here. Hatcher pulled rope from his belt. I'll teach you to braid proper. Might need it for the new fence line. He guided her hands through the pattern over, under. Pull tight. His fingers were patient, warm, certain. She smelled leather and wood smoke and honest sweat. This, she thought suddenly, this is what safety feels like. The realization frightened her more than the storm. They sent me as a joke, she said abruptly. Mrs. Garrett and the others thought you'd turn me away and they'd have a story to tell over Sunday dinner. Hatcher's hands stilled on the rope. Long silence, filled only by rain. I know, he said finally. Saw Garrett's smirk clear as day when she suggested it. Marlene's breath caught. You knew. Small town. Cruelty travels fast. He resumed the braiding. Joke's on them. Though, you're the best hand I've had in 10 years. Something broke loose in Marlene's chest, something she'd been holding tight since childhood. Tears came hard and sudden, the kind that hurt on the way out. Hatcher didn't try to comfort her with words, just handed her his canteen. Waited. Drink. Storm'll pass. Always does. She drank. The water was cold and clean. Outside, thunder retreated. Rain softened to steady rhythm. Through the barn door, a rainbow arced across the valley, impossible and real. Neither of them moved to leave. Blue curled between them, content. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang. Marlene thought, I don't want to leave. Ever. Hatcher thought, stay. Please stay. Neither spoke the words aloud, but something shifted between them. Permanent as the land. Sunday came with church bells and judgment. Marlene sat in her usual pew back row. Corner spot. Easy to ignore. The service droned on about righteousness and grace. Words that felt increasingly hollow. Afterward, Mrs. Garrett cornered her on the church steps. Marlene, dear, a word. The other women formed a semicircle, penning her in with smiles like knives. You've been at Hatcher's ranch for weeks now, Mrs. Garrett said, alone, with an unmarried man. People are concerned. Translation. How dare you rise above your station? How dare you be happy? My work is honest, Marlene said quietly. Oh, I'm sure it is. Mrs. Garrett's voice dripped honey. But appearances matter. Dear propriety. Surely you understand. What I understand, Marlene said, is that you sent me there hoping I'd fail, and I didn't. Mrs. Garrett's smile sharpened. What you fail to understand is that a woman's reputation is everything, and yours is precarious. The words landed like stones. Marlene walked home through streets that suddenly felt like enemy territory. That afternoon, 3 men arrived at Hatcher's ranch. Town council members, dressed in Sunday suits that looked wrong against the prairie. Hatcher met them on the porch, arms crossed. Hatcher, the lead man said, we need to discuss your arrangement with the Colby girl. Arrangement? Hatcher's voice was flat. She works. I pay. That's the arrangement. An unmarried woman, alone with you. It's improper. What's improper is you standing on my land telling me how to run it. We're concerned for the girl's reputation. Her reputation was dirt before she got here. And you know it. Now she's working honest, holding her head high, and suddenly you care. Hatcher's laugh was bitter. Send her back to town. That's what you really want. Keep her in her place. The men exchanged glances. For her sake, Hatcher, send her home. After they left, Hatcher stood on the porch for a long time, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. When Marlene arrived the next morning, he was waiting. Barn's mostly done, he said, not meeting her eyes. Might be best you stay in town now, for your reputation. The words hit like a fist to the stomach. Marlene understood immediately. He was protecting her, shielding her from gossip that could destroy what little standing she had. But it felt like crumpling paper all over again. I see, she said quietly. She gathered her tools, walked to the fence. Blue followed, whining. Thank you, she said, for treating me like I mattered, Marlene. But she was already walking away. Hatcher watched until she was a speck on the horizon. Blue howled a sound like heartbreak given voice. Inside, he found the bottle of whiskey he hadn't touched in 10 years. Tonight, he thought, he might break that streak. Some nights, the darkness wins. Marlene's room above the bakery was cramped and cold. She lay awake listening to her mother's cough through thin walls, watching moonlight crawl across the ceiling. 3 weeks back in town and the weight of it pressed down like stones on her chest. The pitying glances, the whispered conversations that died when she entered rooms, the small, suffocating sameness of it all. But something had changed inside her. She couldn't unsee her own worth, couldn't unknow the feeling of work done well, of respect given freely. The town's verdict no longer felt like gospel, just one story among many. She stood, looked in the mirror. I won't go back to Small, she whispered. 5 miles north, Hatcher stood at his daughter's grave in the aspen grove. The headstone read, Sarah Hatcher, beloved daughter, fear is smaller than love. I let another good soul get run off, he said to the stone. Just like I let you go without fighting the fever hard enough. Wind stirred the aspen leaves, that distinctive sound like water over stones. He remembered Sarah's last words, voice thin with sickness. Don't let them make you small. Daddy, promise me. He'd promised, then spent 10 years shrinking into silence and isolation. You sent her, didn't you? He said to the wind. One last gift, and I'm letting her go like a coward. Blue whined and pressed against his leg. Hatcher looked at his dog, then at the grave, then at the ranch spread below the barn he and Marlene had rebuilt together. One board at a time. Blue, he said, we're going to town. Time to stand. He saddled his horse. Marlene packed her rucksack in the pre-dawn darkness, not to leave town to return to the ranch. To tell Hatcher she'd rather face scandal than spend another day small and safe. She walked east as the sun rose. Hatcher rode west. Their paths converged on the town square just as Sunday congregation gathered. The town square filled with people dressed in Sunday best judgment, costumed as respectability. Hatcher rode in on his bay gelding, steady and deliberate, dismounted, stood in the center of the square, like a prophet facing Pharisees. Conversation died in ripples. Mrs. Garrett stepped forward, flanked by council members. Mr. Hatcher, how unexpected. I have something to say, Hatcher announced, voice carrying across stone and silence. And you're all going to hear it. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for spectacle. You sent Marlene Colby to me as a joke, cruelty dressed as charity. You wanted to watch her fail, wanted to laugh at me for taking pity on her. His eyes swept the crowd. But she didn't fail. She worked harder and truer than any hand I've known, man or woman. Fixed what was broken, built what needed building. Mrs. Garrett's face flushed. This is highly inappropriate. What's inappropriate? Hatcher continued. Is sending good people to fail for your entertainment. What's inappropriate is measuring worth by appearance instead of character. He pulled a folded document from his coat. I'm asking Marlene Colby to stay on as my ranch partner. Legal partnership, witnessed, proper, with full share of profits and land rights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Partner! Mrs. Garrett's voice was shrill. That's my business. Hatcher said, question her character. You question mine. I'm done watching good people get ground under gossip. Movement at the edge of the square. Marlene walked through the parting crowd. Rucksack on her shoulder. Morning light caught her face sunburned. Freckled. Absolutely certain. She stopped beside Hatcher. Said nothing. Didn't need to. Her presence was answer enough. Mrs. Garrett sputtered. This is unseemly. What's unseemly? Marlene said quietly. Is cruelty dressed as concern? Ma'am? The old pastor stepped forward, genuine kindness in his weathered face. Seems to me, he said, the Lord judges hearts, not scales, and he favors the merciful. He looked at Mrs. Garrett. The girl speaks truth. Meeting adjourned. Decent folks nodded. Some smiled. Others looked ashamed. Mrs. Garrett retreated, powerless for the first time in years. Hatcher offered his hand to Marlene. She shook it firm. Equal. Partners, he asked. Partners, she said. They rode double back to the ranch, Blue running alongside. The town watched them go, some with shame, some with anger, all knowing the rules had just changed. Spring came like a promise kept. The barn stood complete timber and sweat, and second chances made solid. Inside, Marlene trained horses with patient hands, teaching them that trust was earned slow and kept sacred. A small cabin sat beside the barn, built to her specifications. Her terms partnership, not dependency. Her home earned. 3 young girls from town stood in the training ring, learning to ride. Marlene moved among them with quiet authority, adjusting stirrups, praising effort. Heels down. Emma. That's it. The horse feels your confidence before you do. Mrs. Garrett's daughter was among them, sent by a mother learning humility, one small surrender at a time. Hatcher worked the fence line, Blue supervising. He looked up, caught Marlene's eye across the yard, smiled. He smiled now, not often, but real. Evenings they shared supper on the porch, fried potatoes, venison. Bread Marlene baked in the cabin's small stove. Comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation about tomorrow's work, next season's plans. Never thought this place would feel like home again. Hatcher said one night. It always was, Marlene replied. Just took the right people to see it. A young girl approached, hat in hand. Ma'am, I'm Katie Miller. Would you teach me to ride? Marlene recognized her, the blacksmith's daughter, painfully shy, avoiding mirrors. Call me Marlene, she said. And yes, everyone starts somewhere. Katie's face lit like sunrise that evening. As stars emerged and crickets sang, Marlene brushed the mare that had once been skittish and wild. The horse stood calm under her hands, trusting. Hatcher mended tack on the porch, leather and needle and lamplight. "Think Sarah would approve?" Marlene asked. Hatcher looked up. "I think she sent you. Her last gift to a stubborn fool. Then we'd better make her proud." "Reckon we already are." The sky deepened to indigo. Somewhere an owl called. The land breathed with growing things, grass and wildflowers and possibilities. The barn stood solid, timber laced with sweat and second chances. Inside, a girl who'd been sent as a joke was teaching other girls that worth isn't weighed on scales. It's built one. True thing at a time. Outside, a man who'd forgotten how to live was remembering. One small smile at a time. And between them, a dog named Blue slept in the sun, content in the knowledge that his family was whole. Above, endless Montana sky. Below, land that knew the weight of a life and carried it anyway. Home. Finally, home.